Morning, one and all. I was going to do a video today about West Ham's finances, and in particular, a couple of articles that I'd seen written where we would maybe applied to get an overdraft, maybe taken another loan. Then I was going to talk about the staggered payments with regard to Sebastian Haller, and of course, the way we're trying to structure the Said Ben Rama deal. So what I did was I logged on to the computer and I started reading the articles. And two of the articles were by the man that you're going to see in a second. Actually, you can probably see him on screen now. And I thought, actually, rather than phone him up and pick his brain and ask him to sort out what seemed like an absolute minefield to me, go straight to the guy that wrote the articles. So I pulled Sean onto the video and he's going to help me explain it. Hello, mate, you're right.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as I'd say on the podcast.
I probably good morning by the time everybody watches this, but most definitely
But they might watch it later though.
They might most definitely 10 to 3 on Sunday afternoon. So a very good Sunday afternoon. Thanks for joining us, mate. Right, let me cut to the chase. First of all, you wrote an article last week suggesting that we had, well, first of all, that we had applied with Barclays for a loan, okay, and the loan would be secured against next season's ticket money. About a week prior to that, you'd written an article suggesting that we'd opened a facility. Now, how I read that article was that it was almost like an overdraft. So I put two and two together, possibly came up with six, which is why I've got you on here. We've got an overdraft facility. We have, it's on my understanding, we also have a loan, which we don't quite know how much yet. We have a liability to pay for Ben Rama, but also the owners put a £25 million share issue recently. Where do we stand with our finances, please, mate? Just obviously one thing at a time, starting with a loan, I guess.
So let's start with the beginning. I'm a sad person where I read Companies House, and every time I'm on a list, and you can put yourself on a list. Any time that a company files something with Companies House, which is now online and free to everybody, I get an alert. So every time, there's two main companies with West Ham. One's called WH Holdings Limited, which is the parent company of West Ham, and the other one's called West Ham United Football Limited.
Why are they two? Why are they two? Why? Because to be fair, Sean, you are a geek, right? As we established when we were talking computers before we. Okay, let's not assume that everybody knows. Why are there two companies?
Well, one is a holding company or a parent company, and the other one's a trading company. It's quite normal.
Yeah.
Essentially, they can borrow with either one, and essentially the turnover of both are the same. They might have slightly different directors, but the shares are owned via WH Holdings Limited. Some of the loans are in West Ham United Football Limited. It makes no difference because West Ham United Football Limited is wholly owned by WH Holding Limited. So unlike Manchester United, where they own the parent company own a number of football clubs, WH Holding ultimately just owns West Ham United.
Okay, so you've applied to get notifications from Companies House.
So I get a notification.
With Companies House, just so everybody's clear, because this is something that comes up quite a lot, that money can be taken or whatever. As a company, particularly with Companies House, you've got to have absolute clarity with everything that you do. You've got to report everything, right? Or everything financially that happens in that club has got to be reported and has got to be transparent, right?
Yeah, so they have to submit their accounts once a year. A maximum 9 months after the year end. In our case, and in the case of most football clubs, the year end is the 31st of May, the end of the season. So 9 months, they've got up to 9 months to file the accounts. If they do any share issues, if they do any loans where what's called a charge is required, where they're loaning against something, then they have to file them at Companies House. If a director resigns, if a newer director is appointed, all these things need to be registered at Companies House, and that allows me to pick up stories that I write for Claret and Hugh when a new alert comes up. Myself and Kieran Maguire from The Price of Football, because he's a good colleague, a friend, who runs the Price of Football podcast, which I sadly listen to twice a week as well, which is just about football finance, not for everybody, but
No,
that teaches a lot as well.
that sounds like that would put me to sleep, quite frankly. And I'm not going to be rude to you, Sean, because I want to get down to the nitty gritty of this.
Yes.
So charges. Okay, so obviously we don't own a stadium anymore. You've reminded me of something there. I've read in one of the articles. So we've got charges against the training grounds. Is that right?
Yeah. So there are 4 important documents that have been filed with Companies House. Let's go with the first one.
Yep.
The first one was at the beginning of August. It was a charge against the training grounds, the land we own, and the leases of the shops and the lease of the stadium. It's one we do every single year. It's against a company called Media Rights and Holding.
Michael Table's company.
Michael Table's company, allegedly, as reported, but
Okay.
it's a company with someone in Ireland with money that comes from overseas, as you say, reported to be a West Ham fan. We do that every year, and we borrow. It's like an overdraft. It's historically around £40 million we borrow, because that's how much those assets are worth. You can only borrow as much. And what it works is you pay 1% of the full 40 million, which is the facility, and anything you borrow, you pay around 7% interest on. So 1% to have the facility, 7% of anything you actually borrow. And what this allows you to do is particularly for transfers, it allows you to have access to money within 24 hours, particularly over the summer. And we've been doing this for years. And by the way, Everton do it. Everton borrow for media rights and funding this year as well. So it's no different. So we should look at that as like an overdraft.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's the first thing of note. What's the second of the 4?
The second one happened in August as well, and it was what's called a rights issue. This is where the current shareholders they bought extra shares for £30 million for shares they already owned. So that's David Sullivan, David Gold, Trip Smith, Terence Brown, Karen Brady, and who's the other one? Owns the Alba, and I always forget his name. They were not the Brown family. What are they called?
Cerns.
The Harris family.
Okay.
Harris family. They own the Alba Electrics brand, and they made their money there. I think it's Daniel Harris is the son who now sits on the board. So they were asked to basically put 30 million in for shares they already owned. One minor shareholder, decided not to. We don't know who that is.
Was it Sean?
It was either Terry Brown, Karen Brady, or Daniel Harris, because it was a small one, and because of that, David Sullivan put a little bit more in and increased his shareholding by 0.5%.
So whoever didn't put in, their shareholding is diluted slightly.
Diluted, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Okay. So
basically, yeah, they don't get that back. It's not a loan, by the way. They don't get that money back. They're just saying they needed during COVID to put an extra 30 million in. So that went in. So that was in August.
Where did that go? I know the answer.
That went straight into cash flow. So that 30 million went straight into the bank, and it's there to pay wages, pay the transfer fees that we owe for the last 3 years. It's just for general use.
Okay, but it's gone. It's gone now, obviously, because even just player wages would have eaten that up.
We had a black hole. Look, what most people don't know, even though the players took a deferment, that's already been paid. They took a 25% or 20% deferment. I can't remember what the sum was over the COVID period, but on the condition it was paid back at the end of the season.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I know that's all fully paid back. And it's something that I've mentioned in a couple of videos, whether you've seen it or not. I don't know. I think the players should have done more, just generally. Not all of them, not the youth players. Players have been paid in full. Basically, the fact that they waited 3 months for a little bit of their millions, the fact that they deferred a few 100,000 out of their millions each. I don't think was particularly helpful. But anyway, that's digressing. Sorry, so carry on with what you were saying.
Yeah. So just on that, David Moyes, Karen Brady, and Andy Mullett, who's the CFO, also took a pay cut. That wasn't deferred. I think they did take a pay cut for a short period of time, and the two owners deferred their interest on their loans. So we thought that was done and dusted. And then interestingly, at the end of September, Uppoint popped a new charge, and it was for Barclays Bank, and we've never borrowed from Barclays Bank. Mysteriously to me, I thought, well, where's this come from? What's it for? So I did a little bit digging. My sources close to the club tell me it's £25 million, personally guaranteed by the shareholders, in particular Gold and Sullivan, and yeah, just for general use. Again,
a loan or an overdraft?
No, it's a loan. It's a loan.
So actually, that was money that we definitely took, unlike option one from the media sports right from Michael Table, which is there as an option. Loan. Okay, this is a loan, so we've had that 25 million. So 30 million.
Explain to me, yeah.
Okay, so 30 million rights issue, 25 million loan from Barclays Bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think, okay, all right, fair enough. You know, we live in difficult times. Spurs have borrowed 175 million from the Bank of England. Other clubs, Everton had borrowed from Metro Bank. This is no different. You know, a lot of clubs are borrowing. I could go on. You know, if you dig down, we sometimes live in a West Ham bubble. Lots of clubs are borrowing money. So I left it at that. And then in November, literally last week, comes another charge, again from Barclays Bank. So I'm thinking, that's strange. And what surprised me with this one, and I can't get anything up with the value of this, or is it's loaned against next season's season ticket money. It is countersigned by the Premier League and the FA, so they've approved it. And we've borrowed against what's called the Central Fund and the Basic Award. So the Basic Award is how much you would get even if you're relegated, right? So we're borrowing against the 50 odd million pounds you would get as a first year parachute payment if you were relegated. And at that surprises me. I have asked consistently the club, and I've even asked the CFO. I haven't got an answer. Can you explain this second loan with Barclays? And they've not wanted to answer. So you've got to look at, if you look at how much they could loan against the parachute payment, you've got to believe it's somewhere up to probably around £50 million. It might be as low as 10 million, it might be 20, it might be 30, it might be 40, but it could be as much as £50 million. And when you start adding all those sums up together, you get at figures approaching £100 million plus, which is incredible in my view.
Well, wow, yeah. I mean, it certainly is. I think when particularly on the last example you gave, when you're looking for answers and you don't have the answer, then I guess you have to start guessing yourself then, because you've not.
You do.
I would imagine, and I'm learning as we're talking. Literally, I didn't know. That's why I phoned you up earlier. I would imagine if it had just been the first Barclays Bank one, they just would have said, "Look, Sean, we've already explained this is the same," or it's just it's part of.
I asked that exact question. I said, "Is this part of the 25 million?" No answer. So I went to someone else and I said, "Can you answer this?" No answer. So and it seems to be a little, for whatever reason, this seems to be a bit secretive in the club. So a lot of people don't seem to be in the know about this. These loans have been raised at the highest level.
Okay, so there's no
people in the club.
No, but obviously it's whilst there's secrecy from our part, obviously people like the Premier League know, and it's been lottery companies' house. So there's nothing, there's nothing illegal or anything like that about it. But it's
nothing illegal.
It begs the question: what are they doing? What do they want it for? What are they using it for? It's really odd. The third option you gave, which is the first Barclays Bank one, you said a charge. Now, on the first option you gave, which is, as we say, allegedly the Michael Tabor company, I'm trying to make this as easy to follow as for anyone, and particularly myself, my brain.
A charge.
What was that charged against? Because we've already established that the training ground
charge is a mortgage. Yeah. So
what was the collateral? What was the collateral when
the first one was against training ground and leases. The rights offer is not a charge. The third one was personally guaranteed by the owners. The fourth one is guaranteed against the
Wow.
the,
Okay.
the
Okay.
TV season ticket money.
Right. Okay. So the first one, if it goes right, okay, because a charge is a charge. It's security. It's a secured loan. So the first one, if things go belly up, training is secured against a training ground. Third,
Yeah.
Second one doesn't count because that was just a rights issue. Third one, if it goes belly up, then actually Gold and Sullivan have to then pay the loan themselves out
Yeah.
their own personal finances.
Yeah.
The last one, if it goes belly up, then our future earnings go to pay off the. Okay, well that's really interesting. That's I mean that's an awful lot of borrowing. That's an awful lot of borrowing, actually, particularly when bearing in mind when they came in, we were saddled with £100 million worth of debt. So it seems like we will have that or
Not
thereabouts.
compared to Man United, by the way. If you put it in context and you look at what other clubs are borrowing, and I mentioned Spurs, 175. Other clubs are borrowing as well. And here's the strange thing, and I think this is slightly, I got a lot of grief in the transfer window saying this will be I think I said it was going to be a very quiet transfer window, and I was made to look a fool after the Premier League spent 1.2 billion. But the truth of it is, I was right from a point of view is they're spending money they haven't got. It's obscene that they spent 1.2 billion when they're borrowing hundreds and hundreds, if not over a billion. I would have been, if you added up every single loan in the Premier League, and look, not all of it's in the public domain, I would say that the clubs have borrowed over a billion as well. There's a correlation between what's been spent in transfer windows and what's been borrowed. The one club not doing borrowing and in serious trouble is Burnley. And they didn't play in the transfer window, and they're now in a bit of trouble. They didn't sell their Tarkowski to us, and I think after being one of the best run Premier League clubs without a doubt, financially, they're in real danger of being relegated this year.
No, I listen. I totally agree with all that. And to be fair, I'm going to keep this video short because I mean, there's so much to cover in it. To be fair, it gives me something to talk about for the rest of the week, which is what we're going to do with this money that we've brought in. And obviously, I know 30 million of it's been eaten up, and 25 million. I'll go into all that afterwards, certainly. But in defence of you, will you say about the 1 billion that the Premier League paid out in transfer fees, and it is obscene, and I don't just mean it's obscene because of what they're borrowing. I think it's obscene bearing in mind how the lower league clubs are struggling, bearing in mind the state the country's in, and the economy and the unemployment rates and all that. But anyway, it's obscene for a load of different reasons. What I do find really interesting about it, though, and as I say, in defence of you, is I think if you take no context, no nuance, no detail, then it does look like a big spend. But then when you consider that Chelsea actually accounted for a quarter of that money, then you start and actually already, so that was already 30% down on what you'd consider to be a normal transfer spend. Then you consider take quarter of it away for Chelsea. Why do you take quarter of it away? Well, because it's come from a very, very rich man, and also they'd had a transfer embargo beforehand, so they had money saved up to spend. Chelsea. Actually, you look at Crystal Palace. Well, Crystal Palace, there are reasons behind it. Crystal Palace's spending, they had 50 million in the bank from Wan-Bissaka, which they hadn't spent, so they were able to go out and spend a little bit more. And actually, when you look at it and you've got actual proper spending, I don't think there is an awful lot. And I just think it's really, really interesting how much we've borrowed there.
Everyone is going to have massive holes. This pandemic has affected. Obviously, ticket revenue is nothing. Corporate revenue is nothing. Sponsor revenue has reduced. Retail, because people aren't going to club shops and only buying on, has reduced. Every club, if you think we've been hit, we've lost. We lost 12.5 million last season because of the pandemic. We lose probably at least 50 million this year. You think that's big? You compare it to Man United or Spurs. They're losing big sums. While you say, oh, they had this money left over, even Chelsea will feel it financially without obviously ultra rich Abramovich with his plaything going, there you go, have another 200 million pound interest free loan. But Palace don't have that, Burnley don't have that, Sheffield United don't have that, etc. They're going to Not all the owners will put their hands in their pockets like Abramovich.
No, I think the whole thing is fascinating. But you say we operate in a West Ham pub, and I'm interested in West Ham. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm going to do this video, and I am going to title it "West Ham borrow 100 million" to clickbait it up. But and we'll blame you for that, Sean. In terms of Tottenham, yeah, obviously they are in a worse position for us. They built a stadium predicated on the fact that they could get in 60,000 for every game, massive corporate, and the NFL franchise.
Interest-free, by the way. Interest-free. They took an interest-free mortgage.
Yeah, but not when they bought the stadium.
Yeah, when they bought the stadium, they arranged an interest fees that is interest-free. They said they will work out how to pay for the stadium sometime in the future. This is what Daniel Levy. It's not a Spurs, as I would say, podcast, but it's not a podcast stream. But they've just bought interest-free, and they've got to work out some way to pay for their £1 billion stadium.
Yeah, but their liability is huge. Sure. And the point is, they never expected this. They thought they'd have an NFL franchise playing in there. They thought. I know the corporate. I went there once before everything went mad, and it was impressive, highly impressive stadium, by the way. And obviously, their liability on that was based on them having money coming in from corporate, from tick turnstiles, from NFL, from everything. Yeah. So no, I don't doubt that they're suffering as well. Listen, I'm going to leave it there because one
last point, right? And bring it back to West Ham. And you said this at the beginning. What are we spending this money on apart from wages? Because, our wage bill, and a lot of people point out, our wage bill was £136 million 2 years ago. It probably came down to 115 million last season, and it's probably around 100 million this season, right? So it has reduced by 36 million. So where's the money going? The reality is, and people roll their eyes at this, we're still paying the credit card bill for Manuel Pellegrini. The £215 million we spent still being paid off. So it's like everybody, you buy a player like Allaire, and still playing for Anderson and a number of other players, and you try and spread it over as long as you can. If you can spread it over the length of their contract, 4 or 5 years, you do. Usually most clubs will say piss off, you can only play it over 3 years, but still work out how many players we've bought and the value of the players in the last 3 years. You'll work out that we're paying millions and millions on average every month playing for the Pellegrini era. And, everyone's got to take the blame for that. But that's why we're in the situation we're in. We're paying our credit card bill for past spending, really.
Yeah, well, I don't doubt that at all. But, the fact remains that we're skin. Which is which really is, as I say, that really is the reason for us speaking here, and to try and get a grip and a grasp of what's going on and where the money. As I say, I will look more into where the money's going further on the week. You're more than welcome to help me out with that anyway. But it was really this was only about cutting through what have we borrowed, because it does seem like a minefield, but and we're not getting told. And I guess I guess they may well think, well, actually, it's not your business, because we're
one last group of people we borrowed from.
The fans.
You and me. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm getting the 10%. I don't know about you, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to know. I believe it could be up to a third. Who knows? But I left my refund money in the club cash. I'm getting the 10%. It's better than any money I'd get from any other bank, to be honest. So I'm getting the 10% on keeping the money and supporting the club. And you can probably say that quite a lot of people took that offer. It was a very generous offer.
So, a lot of people did do it to support the club. So the club, how much it helps, I don't know. How much do you think, actually? How much do you think they retained by the season ticket money? How much do you think the club brought in?
I would say 10 million. Okay. I reckon 10 million.
Okay, fair enough. Right, Sean. Listen, I'm gonna cut this off now. I'm not going to stop speaking to you. I'm going to end the video. I'm going to speak to you again about something else in just a second. So, so for. To pretend that we're actually going to say goodbye to each other now, when we're not, we're just going to end the recording, and we're going to carry on talking. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
No, thank you. You're welcome. Everybody else, I hope this has cleared it up a little bit. I'm going to continue talking to Sean now. I'm going to get some more information from you, but I'm already at 25 minutes, and quite frankly, yeah, if you're watching this in the morning, as we suspect, you've probably got something to do.